I think housing in general, the housing issues that I have championed, the housing czar, the money, the revenue stream, the allocation of funds toward the housing production, the pay for success. We need to, this is a very serious problem, and it's not like a sexy problem. It's not like it's a, you build a new building and something nice happens and you can point to it as an accomplishment. But this is a very real problem, and we need to address it. And it's popular among the members, and it's popular in the Senate too. I have to tell you that this was a priority of the Senate in our negotiations. And all my colleagues, not just the chairman and the leader, many of my colleagues from all districts, all parts of the state recognize that this is a problem. And we're doing a land use review committee. We've just launched a low and moderate income commission. We want to study different ways. We want to look at what other states are doing and what can we emulate that would be good for Rhode Island.
The czar's office, I mean, is it just one position for the czar? Is it an office? And talk a little bit about that, the funding level for that.
So it's in the budget. It will be like an undersecretary in commerce. We, the General Assembly, will not do the selection, but we have put some criteria of what we're looking for in terms of background and qualifications.
But again, it's one person.
One person, but there'll be some assistance from Commerce. I've spoken to Commerce Secretary prior. He recognized that this is an economic development issue. People don't believe it or not, but if you can't find enough quality, affordable housing for your workforce, companies won't move here. So this is a serious problem, and it's not just people like just the homeless. It runs the whole gamut of the socioeconomic ladder. So this is a problem that needs to be addressed. I had a very interesting conversation with someone today, actually at Chairman McNamara. I had a lunch that I went to, and he's in the building construction business. He said to me, finally, the price of lumber has dropped 30% today or this week, which I thought was very interesting because I'm hoping that will stop bringing the cost of new construction down.
But how much, I mean, you're very familiar with this from your work as a lawyer. How much is it just...
When I used to do the work.
Yeah, you had time for it. But how much of it is just the cities and towns? You know, Rhode Island's already pretty dense. They don't want more construction. And as long as Rhode Island doesn't build houses, which we don't do much of, and other types of housing, it's kind of unsolvable with that.
It is, but we're looking at creating some kind of a formula with the infrastructure bank to help with extending water lines and sewer lines, doing a state match. We've done something like that in the last round of bonds that were approved in March, but that was from a commercial standpoint. So there's opportunities to look at this in a way that we can hopefully incentivize it or mitigate the costs of new houses. A lot of times people don't want new houses because they bring in young families, children in the school system. You have people who have large lot zoning requirements. So that's what the commission is going to see what we can do. There's an answer for that. There's an answer called cluster development, which is you have 10 acres of land, and there's supposed to be 1 acre per home. So you leave 5 acres open space, and you put the other 10 houses, the same equivalent, on half-acre lots. And so you have 5 acres of development and 5 acres of open space. You know, we all have to work together. Cities and towns, you're right, Ted, they have to do their part. Everybody wants housing, but nobody wants it in their backyard. So hopefully we can look at this issue, we can incentivize it, and if that's not successful, then we can look at maybe some kind of an aid formula, restricting their aid, not necessarily taking away, but not giving them increases. If they're not doing their part, if there's a silent prejudice against affordable housing, then we will act on that, but I'm not ready to do that now, and certainly not at the beginning of this process. Let's see what we can do. We filed legislation for e-permitting. We filed legislation not to tax spec homes until they actually ready to be lived in. I mean, that legislation has passed. We made that permanent. So there's lots of incremental steps we can do. I wish there was one magic bullet that could solve the problem. It's a case-by-case, city and town issue. And then you have the environmental concerns. You have to balance that. You don't want to be building on wetlands. You don't want to be building, in historic districts, the houses that don't. So it's a balance. You have to look at this stuff. I think the Zoning Enabling Act, which this General Assembly passed in the early 90s, needs to be revisited. We haven't done that in 30 years. So it's time to look at that. What can we do? to address these issues. They're long-standing issues. They're on the gauntlet of infrastructure, NIMBY, environmental constraints. There's a lot of things you can do with zoning, so you can also have in-laws, your family members live with you without the need to go into a zoning board or a planning board hearing. Let's try to keep families together, keeps them out of institutions, keeps them together. The family is happier, the state's happier, the medical system, home care is happier.
You know, in Rhode Island, only 35 people have been able to use the housing vouchers in the last 6 months out of 240 or so of applications. 89 people were granted these vouchers in Rhode Island, but there is no affordable housing that will take these vouchers.
Well, we passed the law, and
Right.
it signed into law just this past March.
Oh, I know, but I mean, even with that, where there's no housing for them, it's not a matter of being discriminated against necessarily. It's a matter that there is no place to redeem them.
So, you're right. I know it's a problem. We have to look at our housing authorities, and we have to make sure that they can use more capacity. Can they build more affordable housing? We have to look at that opportunity. Some of that comes from Washington, and we have to look at some of our cities and towns that have surplus real estate and see if we can incentivize it for them or get them to commit to building an empty school and making it into a mixed-use facility. I know in Warwick we have 4 empty schools that can be converted into housing, whether it's elderly housing, affordable housing, workforce housing.
I went to Lockwood, for instance,
Okay.
which is housing.
I live in Lockwood,
Yeah.
so